Welcome back to another episode of the REI Live podcast. I'm excited today. I'm always excited, but Jonathan Averett, right? Did I get that right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Jonathan Averett. I first met back in, my recollection is 2018 when I wrote the book. And I think you came to that REI Live, that meetup.
I've got that book. Yes.
Got this book. And you told me one time that you read it and you took some of my advice. So tell everybody who you are, what you do. I know you're in Birmingham, Alabama. You're a realtor. You've done some wholesaling. You've developed a real estate career, quit your job but it wasn't always that way. And so I want to get into your story a little bit. So tell everybody what you're doing today.
So today I'm a realtor with eXp Realty. Prior to getting my real estate license, I did a lot of wholesaling. Once the pandemic hit, I picked up my real estate license. So now I'm a full-time dad. My wife and I both work from home. I do real estate in between all of that now. I'm not as active as wholesaling as what I was before. So I guess I'm a real estate not quitter, right? That's a good way to put it. I mean that sincerely from the bottom of my heart, right? Because real estate can really change your world and change your mindset. So if there's one thing that I'm doing right now, it's continuously chasing that dream of real estate success, whatever that looks like.
And that's looked like a lot of different things for you, though. And when I first met you, you started a meetup group with zero experience. Never did a deal. Why'd you do that? Because I feel like you did that for a long period of time. You had a real estate meetup group that you were running, and you'd never done a real estate deal before. Why'd you do that?
You know what? I did read your book, and your book said to do that, right? But the truth is, here's the truth, Brian. Now, I never said this out loud, but here's the truth. I found your meetup right through the process of, I entered this game as a motivated seller. We'll talk more about that, I guess, on the tail end of this. But the reason I really started the meetup was the time slot. I mean, going to meetups got 4 kids, full-time job, husband, all that kind of good stuff. And the time really was like, man, what's the most beneficial time for me to do this, right? And I picked a date and I said, hey, look, we're going to do it. And I followed a lot of your tips and stuff you were giving out at your meetup, which at the time I didn't really realize what I was going to. It's a real estate meetup here in Birmingham, Alabama. No big deal, I'll go. But I started that, man, just because out of time necessity for myself, right? I mean, I'd never done a deal, never even come close to doing it. I was a motivated seller, right? I'm like, hey, look, Thursday nights at 7 o'clock is tough for me, right? So I'm going to do it on Saturday mornings at 6 o'clock. I remember messaging you and said, hey, man, I'm going to start this deal on Saturday. Is 6 o'clock too early? And you wrote back and said, well, who's going to show up at 6 o'clock?
On Saturday.
Who comes at, hey, so I did it at 9 o'clock, right? Which is still too early hindsight. But I just did it, man. I just like, you know what? I mean, you got to go to these meetups because all the people I was meeting at your group there and all the knowledge I was getting from there, which I didn't start the meetup to do that, right? I started the meetup to sit down and talk to people just like you and I are talking right now. That's why I started the meetup.
But why? Well, why did you want to talk to people about real estate? I don't understand. Unless you were trying to get into real estate, maybe you were trying to get into real estate. Is that why you started it? Like, I'm trying to really understand the why behind it.
I learned, so at the time, I guess I'm 45 years old next year, right? And that was 6 years ago. At the time, I didn't know anything about networking. I'd never been to an event. All through college, I actually minored in real estate at UA down in Tuscaloosa. I'd never thought about getting out and meeting people and shaking hands and hearing stories, right? If I'd have done that, maybe I'd have been on a completely different trajectory and we wouldn't be talking here today. But just by going to your meetup and hearing you say networking, right, and learning about and reading your book, right? I mean, sitting down with somebody and just talking. Hey, how's it going? What are you doing? You learn so much from that person, regardless of whether they are, new like me, never done a deal, or they're doing deals daily, right? I had people show up to that meetup, right, that were doing, millions of dollars, right? Hundreds of deals a year, right? Just because they like to come out and sit down and see somebody, right? That's why I started the Meetup. I learned so much just from talking to people and meeting people I never would have met before in my life, before I'd even done a deal, right? That's why I started it, to meet people, shake hands, and learn something.
Because you eventually wanted to do a deal.
100%, yes. Yeah, but I knew being there wasn't going. I knew I wasn't going to get any wholesale at the time. I didn't understand how you can network with other investors and do deals that way, right? I didn't understand that process. I knew nobody was going to show up that wanted to sell their house, even though I did try and put that in there before. It's like, hey, if you're thinking about selling your house, there's a group of investors that show up on Saturday. Who's going to show up to that, right? Well, I don't think any of them did, but the mindset was not to do a wholesale deal. The real mindset was to meet other people and just network.
To what end, though? Just to learn the business or to try to collaborate with people?
You know, truthfully, I love hearing stories, right? I met a lot of people out of that group, but I sit down and I talk to people that would travel. It's just, we met at like, what was it, Panera Bread for like a year and a half or something, right? People would come. We were in Birmingham, and I met people that would drive from Gadsden. That's an hour, right? Who drives an hour to a meetup at Panera Bread? People would do that. And here, I talked to this lady, and she was just getting started, you know, and she was like, I've never done a deal. I'm like, you know what? That's me too, right? To make that connection with her, right? And hear her story and hear how motivated she was to find that first deal, right? And what little bit of knowledge I'd learned through other things. If you're one step ahead of somebody, you're like, I mean, you know, that one little piece of information can change their life, regardless of how big it is, right? Oh, well, you just pick up the phone and you say, hey, you're interested in buying your house. People don't know that, right? And also I was sitting down with a guy one day there, and I was like, well, how do you get your deals? He's like, people just bring me deals, right? This was one of the biggest guys in Birmingham. And he was coming in and just sit down. We just talked about it, right? Just picking his brain, sitting that close from somebody. You can't get that if you don't, you know, spend a lot of time in the game. Starting fresh out, right? I never would have that opportunity. Who would show up and talk to me like that, right? Nobody. And that's the truth. So if you're listening to this now, go out and start your meetup.
You're saying, but what you're saying though is, if you were to go to someone else's meetup as a brand new person, you're saying that no one would bother to talk to me. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, not like that.
But because you're the organizer, you're the person that put the thing together. And I went at least one time.
Yep.
And it's such an intimate group. It's not like there's, you know, hundreds of people here. You're averaging what, maybe 8-10 people. It was such an intimate group that you're able to have these conversations. And like you just said, some really big folks in our market would show up, and now you're not just some nobody. Even though you'd still never done a deal, you're still not a nobody because you're the one that put the whole thing together. Yep. Just talk about that importance.
You know,
that difference.
I tell people that. That's why I just said it a minute ago. It's so important to do that, right? And I learned that, you know, and I don't want to sound crazy or whatever, but I mean, if you put an event together, even if something small, people see you as the person at the front of the room. Even though I'd never done a deal, right? I didn't speak at these events. I didn't do anything like that. And I still do a small one here in town also that I've networked and got a larger venue to. I don't speak at those events, but if you're the person putting it on, if you're the, I don't want to use big words, if you're the entity or I don't want to make it sound like I'm blowing off whatever, but I mean, if you're coordinating the event and you're out there, people are going to come to you, bring you deals. Even when I was doing the small event in Trussville, right? Just hanging out, people would bring me deals. Oh, the wholesalers come, hey man, I got this deal. How do you move it? At the time, I didn't really, how do I do that, right? I didn't connect all that, but just because we were showing up at Panera and eating breakfast.
But Jonathan, you never, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like you did this instead of buying coaching. This was your coaching.
You know what, 100%, man. The people I got to talk to, and I can still, you know, reach out to those people today if I have questions. I learned so much. Every week, someone else new will show up that's either in the tax, you know, killing it in the tax area, tax deeds or whatever, flipping houses, doing, you know, buying new houses and renting them out right there, looking to get into that. Yeah, I mean, you meet a different person, each week. And you can't get that. You can get that by buying it. But I've met so many different people that do so many different niches in real estate. Yes, 100%.
I want to get my phone out here.
Okay.
I want to, where are you? I know. Okay, here we go. I was looking at this because when I messaged you to come on the show, because I've been telling your story a little bit, a couple of times here and there, but I don't even know the whole story. I just know kind of bits and pieces of it. But I'm going back through our messages in Facebook Messenger. Like, there's a lot here, and it goes all the way back to 2017.
Yeah.
And when you're brand new in real estate and you're trying to get started, you want to know how to get started. And then you start your meetup. Hey, Brian, will you come out to my meetup? I'm about to start this meetup. Any advice? Any advice from? And I just got done doing a video on the most powerful networking phrase or question that you can make, or you can do for somebody, is to ask for advice. It's so powerful. Someone who's way ahead of you in the game, you ask them what they should do. Getting that advice. People love to give advice. You asked me for advice, and I'm sitting here giving you advice on how to start and grow your meetup group. If you would have approached me a different way and didn't ask me the question that way, if you were, hey, will you come to my meetup group or something like that? Maybe I would have done that anyway, but something that's a little bit more maybe intrusive versus you're asking. It's almost like the person who's coming for like, please help me. Like, you can't like turn that down. And it's so, and I think your story, at least how you got started, is a testament to, it goes back to, what Tom Kroll used to say about, if I've never done a wholesale deal before and someone asked me about, like, one of the sellers is asking me, have you ever done this before? You just be honest with them. No, I've never done this before. This is my first one. People don't want to do that because they're scared. We always think of like act as if, fake it till you make it, but fake it till you make it. It might work in a certain way, but what is more powerful is the vulnerable, I'm brand new at this and I need your help. People root for an underdog and they want to help the underdog. And that, I feel like, you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's kind of your story and how you got started. You were so vulnerable and authentic and honest about who you were and what you were trying to accomplish that everybody wanted to come help you and everybody was rooting for you. And I guess it helps that you have a humble spirit to you. It helps that you weren't afraid to ask questions and ask for advice, not assuming and acting like you already had all the answers.
Mm-hmm. That's true, man, because the people that are one step behind you, depending on where you're at in your journey, right? Everybody needs to get that first, whatever it is, right? So there's some guy out there right now that's looking to do what you're doing, right? He just needs that one piece of advice, right? And the same thing whenever I was doing the meetup, it's just wholesaling, just one piece changes their life forever, right? And being open, and you know what? Whenever I started the group, I mean, people probably thought that I'd done a lot of deals or whatever, right? But I was fully transparent. I never said, hey, look, whatever. People show up and like, hey, look, I'm just here to hang out and drink coffee, and do this right here. And even with the events we do now, I bring in speakers to talk about it and stuff like that. People that show up to these meetings, we did one on social media for realtors a couple months ago. I mean, they just need that one piece of advice, right? And I just love talking to people about stuff like that, right? And just opening up, because I feel like your story will change somebody's life wherever you're at. So be honest about it,
So Jonathan, what has it, you did this, you started the meetup group with no experience, never did a deal. What did it do for you? Fast forward 3.5, almost 4 years later, what did it do for you?
I went in, excuse me. I didn't have the fear of starting it to begin with, but now I know that hosting something, or even I did a podcast for a little while, doing stuff like that, you make connections now. I mean, I know people I never would have known, right? So I have those connections to where if something comes across my plate, I can say, hey, this person right here is the person you need to go to. People come to me all the time still. Hey, I've got this question here. I have no idea, right? I'm a realtor here in Birmingham. I had a realtor call me out of, I think he's out of Auburn, maybe. call me asking about investing advice, right? I'm like, well, I don't know the answer to that, but because of the person I'd met through the meetup, I was like, hey, look, talk to this guy right here. So whenever somebody approaches me now with just about any type of real estate issue, right? If I don't know the answer, I can connect him with that person through these meetup groups, the ones that I've held and the others that I've attended. So really, it's just expanded my, and those people are not going to forget that, right? They're going to say, hey, look, I called Jonathan. He didn't know, but he connected me, right? So it's given me the mentality of be a connector, right? So regardless of where I'm at in my journey, even if I'm down here, somebody up here calls me, I know somebody, I can connect them. So that means I can go back to that person and they can pull me up, right?
But what, like, skip to the end result. Like, yes, doing the meetup group has allowed you to meet a lot of people. You've connected with people. You've been able to connect other people. But what has it done for you specifically? What successes in real estate have you seen as a result, as a byproduct of starting that group?
It's not being afraid to try something different, right? I've looked at owner financing. I've looked at, investing in apartments and things like that, only because I've met these other people, right? And without those barriers being brought down and speaking with other people, I never would have in my mind thought, hey, I'm just an average guy. I can, talk to other investors and network and raise the funds, or talk to other investors and do deals in this way right here. Without that, if I'd have never done that, it's just like this is another part of the story. It's like whenever I got laid off from my job, I'd been wanting to quit for years, right? But until you tear that Band-Aid off, right, you never know. So that all these different areas of real estate, if I hadn't sit down and talk to people, it would still be just a thought, a theory, right? So I'm really not afraid to try new things, right? Even though I don't succeed, right? But without having that experience, that one-on-one with talking to somebody, you would never take that jump, right? So it's really just rip the fear off of, there's nothing that I'm afraid to try or venture into.
Tell me about your first deal. How did your first deal come about? How did you eventually do a deal?
What was the first? That was a good question. I should have thought about that. What was my first deal? Gosh. Oh, man.
I remember my first deal like it was yesterday.
Why did I remember that? You know what? My first deal really was my dad's house, right?
Okay, so tell me about that.
That's part of the story, too. I was a motivated seller, right?
So tell us about that.
So I had inherited a property, and it took about 2 years for the entire process to play out, because whenever you inherit a property, maybe you're stubborn like I was or whatever, but it took a long time for that to play out. During those 2 years, I started searching for, what do you do with the house that you've inherited, right? What do you do with that? The house is 4 hours away. It needs work. You don't have money to put into it. You can't drive back and forth to do this. And I had all these, and by the time I'd actually picked up the house and it was in my name, I had already, maybe I'm going to owner finance it somebody. Maybe I know I'm not going to wholesale it, right? Because I know the deal I'm going to get on that, Maybe I'm going to fix up and rent it out. So I already knew all those things, right? So that house was really my first. And I wound it up, went through a long process. I almost had it rented, right? And then we ran into some more trouble. I had a lot of investors come to me, offer me a certain price. And I wound up listing it and selling it for a decent cash price. We had somebody that was moving out into the country. We're looking for that property, and I got the best price for it. Why can I not remember our first wholesale deal?
So you inherited a property, and is that when you first started researching real estate, and that's why you came to our meetup group?
Yep.
Because you were just Google searching a lot of stuff and trying to figure out what to do with this house, and you found a real estate meetup group and you went to it.
Exactly. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All of a sudden, hey, you're a real estate investor now, right? You've got a piece of property, which was handed to me on a silver platter, right? What do you do with this opportunity? How do you make the most of this right here? And that's whenever I started searching.
And you end up starting your meetup group. You made some connections. You started learning things, and you found the best path for you and for that particular property to get it sold, which was to list it. But you eventually went on to do real estate on your own. Yep. I mean, you talked about getting laid off and everything, but you eventually started doing wholesale deals. Was a wholesale deal your first deal that you did outside of that one? So talk about getting into wholesaling. Why did you choose wholesaling? And what have you done wholesaling wise? I know you said you haven't done it in a little while, but that was your first kind of foray into really getting going in real estate?
Yeah. Well, the process was, I mean, at the time, I knew the house was eventually going to sell, right? So I had said, we're going to use this much money, and we're going to, and let me back up a little bit. Wholesaling, there's a lot of advertising for once you get into real estate without a real estate license, or I guess, I don't know what the right word, partner, right? Wholesaling kind of pops up. It kind of comes to the top. Well, there's no barriers, right? I had no idea you could do that, right? Who knows you can go out there and do that? I thought you needed a real estate license and a car to ride around in. I thought that's what real estate was, right? Even while I was at UA, I got a minor in that or whatever. I thought real estate, whenever I was there, I thought real estate was buying huge buildings and doing stuff like that. I thought you needed $1 million, right? So the barrier was super low for wholesaling, right? And once you get in that path, there's so much opportunity there, right? There really is. So I took some of the money and I invested that. I bought a lot of data, right? I got onto TTP, right? I had the callers, had the data, the leads I can generate a lot of leads, right? You can generate leads with either cash or time, right? And at the time I had the cash. So I set up the systems and I started the processes. At this time I went back to UAB, right? Because I got laid off. Then I went back for several years and the house came up. So I bought the data, did the calling, worked with some guys here locally, and we were doing really well, right? Well enough to where I was like, hey, look, I can replace my income with this, right? This is real. So I quit my job and I went full-time wholesaling, right?
What year was this, Jonathan? How long ago was this?
This was, man, I'm terrible with dates. My dad died 6 years ago. 4 years, took us 2 years, 4 years, 3 years. COVID's been going on, 2 years now? Yeah, so maybe 3 years ago. When did COVID start? 2 years ago? So maybe 3 years ago, I guess. Because I'd been away from my job full time for a year whenever COVID happened. Right.
Okay, so you're talking about spring of 19 then? Because it was spring of 20 is COVID. So yes. Spring of 19 is when. But you started that meetup group in about the spring of 18.
Yeah, so 2 years maybe.
So so this is what I wanted to get, and I'll have you finish your story here in a second, but I was actually about to ask you about this. It's the way you went about this, Jonathan, is not this is going to happen real quick. You went about this probably intentionally. You already had a job, you had a family. It's like, hey, let's kind of ease our way into real estate. And it took a year for you to, I guess, do your first deal after you started the meetup group, learning from other people.
I remember that now. You're right. It was a year. It's like, God, people do this stuff quick. It took me a full year to get that. Yeah. And by that time we were already, that all came from the cold calling, right? I don't remember it. I'm sure I should remember it, but.
So you mentioned TTP. Did you get the course? Did you do Brent Daniels' course?
I went in with another partner. Yeah. We bought the course together. Yeah.
Okay. I'll link that up. Brent Daniels came to Birmingham and did an incredible job. Does a lot of incredible stuff. I'll link that up right here above you. Click on that. You watch a whole thing on how to TTP, how to talk to people, how to start making cold calls and start getting motivated sellers on the phone. So you started doing that, started getting on the phone and started talking to people.
Not me personally now, right? I had the cash from the house. So, and I already knew the systems, right? The system, none of this is rocket science, right? It's just being able to get it, implement it, and manage it, and be effective at the business process. None of this is rocket science, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to get too far down that road, but yeah, I mean, you can finish off and I'll pick back up.
No, I want you to tell your story. I just think it's really, for a lot of folks, this is kind of the overarching point of the whole entire show. And this is why I want to have you on.
Yep.
You started a meetup group with zero experience. I don't know of anyone else who's doing that. I've been telling people to do that obviously for 3.5, almost 4 years.
Do it. Do it. I'm telling them to do it.
So, but you started with zero experience. You went and started a meetup group a year after you did the meetup, started the meetup. you started experiencing success mainly because you started developing relationships, probably with cash buyers, probably with people who do all different aspects of real estate. You started becoming well known in our area, in our local area, just because you had a meetup group. And just because, like you said, you were the person at the front of the room.
That's it.
And you started doing deals. You started a wholesale business that apparently is not rocket science that anybody can do, but you now have the knowledge. You had the base. Yes, you bought a program. It sounds like you partnered with somebody to make it a little bit less scary, probably. Maybe you had strengths and that person had strengths, and you kind of put those together. And you started wholesaling. And then what happened?
So here's the deal too. Go back up to that right there. It's who's generating the leads, right? If you can generate leads, there's two different ways to generate leads, right? Cash or time. Wouldn't you agree with that? There's free leads.
You're going to spend something. You're either going to spend money to get leads or you're going to spend your time. Yes.
Well, once you identify which one of those you can effectively, get going, then you can put together the other pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had the leads, so you can find people to put in place to do the other parts of the job that you can't do. At the time, I was working full time at UAB behind a desk, but I had leads coming in that I couldn't or wouldn't or whatever. I couldn't figure out how to close them. So get the lead flow coming in right, and then you can put people around that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it worked out for me. And we get it enough, and I quit my job, through texting.
When did you quit your job, or when did you get laid off?
Well, laid off was a couple years prior to me actually quitting.
Oh, you got a new job.
Well, I got laid off from UAB probably 3 years prior to actually quitting. Maybe even more than that. I don't know. I got laid off one time, right? And but that's back to, if I hadn't been laid off, I would have been like, oh, I can't quit my job. I can't. Golden handcuffs, Cody Hoffine. That's where I heard that from. Golden handcuffs. I didn't know what that was. What's he talking about? So I got laid off, and the fear of quitting my job was gone, right? So by that time, we had the cold calling going. I had a partner. So I'm like, we're making enough cash. I'm going to quit my job. Mm-hmm. Only because I've been laid off before, and I know that you don't have to hold on to them golden handcuffs, right? That's a fictional thing that's in your mind, right? Now, I'm not telling you to quit your job. That's what I'm telling you. But if you don't take chances on your life, nobody else is going to take them for you, right? It's like with vacation. If you're working for somebody, who's going to take your vacation for you? Nobody. You got to take it yourself. And in life, these fears and these lies that you're being told, right? If you don't take that leap, nobody's ever going to take it for you. And you're going to end up being 35 years old and still working in a job you hate. Even if you fail, right? Even if you fail, you'll never know, right? I'm so passionate about that, telling people to get out there and just try it and do it, right? And that's the thing I'm starting to meet up. And I'm so thankful that I did get laid off all those years ago. I wish I got laid off at 22. I wouldn't have waited until I was 35 to quit my job. I'd have quit at 25. I took that chance then.
And you're sitting here talking from someone with experience of having a family. Just mentioned you have 4 kids. That's scary. That's scary for people who might be listening to this or watching this. I got a family, Jonathan. So it sounds to me like your advice would be to ease into it, because you eased into it.
Yeah, 100%. Ease into it. Network, learn the processes, and it's not just about, if I did that, started all over again, I wouldn't have bought a course and just quit, right? I wouldn't have done that. You got to know people. And now that I've had a lot of failures and I've been through a lot of things, and what's a failure to me might be a success to somebody else, but I don't think there's a perfect time to quit, right? I don't know if there's a perfect time or not. So I'm not going to talk about that, I guess. Do whatever you feels on your heart to do. But so did the cold calling, quit my job, and then COVID hit, and then finally wound up, the partner and I, we don't work together anymore. It was a mutual, deal to go away from that right there. The wholesaling, I picked up my license, now I'm doing the real estate, and I don't market for wholesaling anymore. It's opportunities there, but that goes back to, if you don't try something, you'll never know, right? I'm comfortable doing wholesaling. I'm comfortable doing different deals and things like that. But without meeting that person through the meetup and just taking a leap, you'll never know, right?
So you're a full-time realtor today. That's what you do?
I'm real estate, yeah, full-time.
Yeah. And so you're listing properties, you're finding buyers. What's your primary responsibility?
So last year, what was it? Last year, June or whatever. My wife was working full time at UAB, right? And I was doing the real estate full time. We have 4 kids, and we homeschool all 4 kids, and we've been homeschooling now, I guess, about 2 years. So we made a decision to swap roles, right? Because coming from a job at UAB, I know that you can work as long as you have the systems in place. Real estate is kind of you can work it to your advantage to different times, right? If you have different people in place, it's a 24-hour deal, right? You don't have to do a 9 to 5. It's not a 9 to 5 job. So I'm actually back at UAB now, remotely from home full time. My wife has left UAB and she's staying home now with the kids. So we homeschool full time, and I work in the listings and stuff like that around my full time schedule. So that's what I'm doing now.
So why'd you decide to go back to work?
Because I wanted her to be home, and I knew, there's certain moments that you have opportunities, right? And if you don't take advantage of those opportunities, then they're past and they're gone, and it might not come back. So once COVID hit, everybody was at home, and we've been home now for, I guess, 2.5 years. And I'm like, you know what, if we're going to do this now, I can go back and get the income from UAB, still do real estate. Because whenever I quit, remember I was working full time, bring her home. So now it's kind of like a transition to where she's home full time. I still have the real estate, and we have the whole family here at the house. And it's tough. It's tough. It ain't nothing I'm telling you is easy. I know it said wholesale was easy and you just put systems in place. Well, it's not easy, but the process is easy, right? But putting in the work is hard. Yeah. Remember that. Okay? Execution is hard. Consistency and execution is key, right? And even then, you better be good at a whole lot of other things. Realize what you're not good at. 100% sure. So we've kind of leveraged this whole COVID deal and remote work. It's really remote work because I can work real estate around things now that I couldn't have before. I'm not at a desk.
Right. And I want to get you out of here on this. I want to ask you, you said in the very beginning, you said, I'm a real estate not quitter.
Yeah.
Just talk about the importance of just sticking with it and just you kind of seeing it through and almost playing the long game. It's like you knew from the beginning, I'm going to play the long game. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not just going to be a one and done.
That's 100% true. And gosh, I had a train of thought about that too. Once I'm going to say this back up, but once you quit your job, once you realize those golden handcuffs are not real, right? My dad said, get an education, get a degree, get a job, and the pot of gold will be on the other end of that. Well, maybe that's not what he told me, but that's what I bought into, right? Once you realize those right there are not real, now, even though I'm back at UAB remotely, that's not my long game, though. That's just a paycheck, right? Once you realize that with real estate, I know that if I don't quit and I keep training, I keep getting those base hits and the doubles every now and then, I know that my game is going to come, right? I'm going to get that home run, right? And I would rather die failing than never taking a chance. Right. So I'll never quit real estate, right? Whatever that winds up being for me, that is that triple or that home run. Well, then I just got to keep swinging the bat, right? I feel so much better quitting my job and maybe failing, whatever that looks like for you or me, than never have taken a chance, right? Are you going to ask me what books I like?
I don't normally. Do you want me to?
I'm going to throw this out there. John Acuff, Start. John Acuff, Start. That's it. That book right there kind of reprogrammed me as somebody that was in my 30s. Wish I'd have read that whenever I was 20, right? If you were 20 and listening to this, don't wait till you're 35.
Yeah.
Get out there now. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop rambling because I'll go way down that road.
Yeah. No, I was 32. I get it.
Yeah.
32, 3 degrees. You can see a lot of them right here. There's a couple right there, and there's one you can't see right there. My Alabama degrees right there. That's nice. Yeah, man. And I get it. And I understand where you're coming from. And I think a lot of folks out there, there are ways, because it is scary. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of, especially if you don't know anything else except a job, there are ways, just like we talked about today with Jonathan, that you can ease into real estate without just having to quit cold turkey and put your livelihood and your family in jeopardy. No one's saying to do that. Now, if you're 20, you don't have a family, you could take a lot more risks. But, you're in your 30s, getting into your 40s and even upward. There are ways to ease yourself into real estate without having to risk everything. So,
Right.
Jonathan, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I don't know why we haven't done this sooner.
I appreciate you asking, man. And I've been waiting for a while too, and I appreciate this. So wherever I'm at on the rung of things, man, getting on here is a big deal. And man, you just don't know, right? You just don't know.
Just ask me. You should have asked me. Come on.
All because I showed up to that meeting. I should have asked. You're right. You preach that. Just ask.
It's my boneheadedness does not. Sometimes I'm in the forest and I'm in the trees and I can't see the forest. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So, but I should have had you on 3 years ago.
I appreciate it, man.
But Jonathan, also congratulations on your success. I really am proud of you, and I pay attention to what you're doing, and it just makes me so happy and proud and excited to see everything you are doing. And you're an asset to our area here in Birmingham, just with what you have done and all the people that you have helped. It's been awesome to watch. So I appreciate you.
Yep. Shout out to Alaria.
Alaria. Yeah. Alaria does not exist anymore. We're REI Live, but yeah.
Google
Alaria,
that.
The Alaria days. Yep. Jonathan, thank you. Appreciate you, man. Guys, make sure you click subscribe, hit the little ring, hit the little bell, get the little notification so you know when we post a new video. We're posting videos every single day right now on our YouTube channel, and this was no different. So make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications. We're going to see you guys next time.